I spent 9 weeks learning how to stand up without instinctively reaching for my side. People talk about organ donation like the hardest part ends after surgery. It doesn't. Recovery settles into ordinary moments. Stairs that suddenly seem steeper, grocery bags that feel heavier, nights when rolling over in bed wakes you before the pain does. Dad recovered faster than I did. Every update from his doctor felt worth it. When Mom announced a family dinner to celebrate his health, I almost declined. Not because I wanted gratitude. I had stopped expecting that years ago. I simply wasn't sure I had the energy to smile through another evening where everyone admired the loudest contribution instead of the quietest one. The restaurant buzzed with conversations before I even sat down. 22 relatives filled 2 long tables. Dad looked healthier than he had in years. His skin had color again. His laugh sounded familiar. Seeing that alone almost justified everything, almost. Dinner drifted along comfortably until Mom tapped her glass. I just want to thank everyone who helped us through the hardest months of our lives. The room fell silent. She smiled toward my younger sister. And especially your sister, who organized the fundraiser and saved your father's life. Glasses lifted, 22 people echoed the toast. No one looked at me for a moment. I wondered if I had imagined the operating room, the weeks in recovery, the scar pulling every time I laughed. Maybe this was simply how families rewrote history. I pushed my chair back. I should get going. Dad reached across the table and caught my wrist. His grip wasn't strong, it didn't need to be. His eyes were wet. Without saying a word, he pulled a folded napkin from his pocket and slid it across the table. Inside wasn't a note. It was a photocopied strip from an official letter. The first line read, "We received a report from the National Transplant Authority." Below it was a summary explaining that the hospital had completed its routine post-transplant review after concerns were raised about inaccurate public fundraising claims connected to the transplant. The review concluded something simple. The fundraiser had paid for travel, temporary housing, medication, and recovery expenses. It had not provided the kidney. The report specifically instructed that future public fundraising materials should accurately distinguish financial assistance from the living organ donation itself to prevent misleading representations. No accusations, no punishments, just facts. Dad finally spoke. I received it yesterday. Nobody said anything. The room had become strangely quiet, not because someone had been exposed, but because certainty had disappeared. My sister stared at her plate. "I never said I donated," Dad nodded slowly. "I know." His voice stayed calm, but I let people believe it. Mom opened her mouth before closing it again. For months, she had repeated the fundraiser story because it was easier. Easier than talking about surgery. Easier than admitting one child had accepted permanent physical risk for another parent. Dad looked around the table. "I've thanked everyone who helped me." He turned toward me. "But I never thanked the person who made it possible for me to still be here." No dramatic speech followed, no applause. He simply stood, walked carefully around the table, and hugged me. It lasted only a few seconds. My side still ached if someone squeezed too hard. He seemed to remember that. When he stepped back, he quietly apologized. Not for the dinner. For every time he had chosen comfort over truth. The conversation never fully recovered. Some relatives suddenly found reasons to check their phones. Others asked awkward questions nobody answered. The celebration dissolved into small clusters of uncomfortable silence. As I left the restaurant, Dad caught up with me outside. "I can't change what happened," he said. "I know, but I can stop pretending." For the first time in years, I believed him. Recognition didn't erase the scar across my abdomen. It didn't return the weeks of recovery. It didn't repair every relationship sitting inside that restaurant. But something had changed. The story no longer belonged to the loudest voice at the table. It belonged to the truth, and sometimes that's the only victory that lasts.